So today is Sunday, October the 6th, 2024. We are with Scott and Jan Shumway, longtime members of the Globe Stake. And they will be talking to us as part of the Globe 50th Stake Anniversary video series. Thank you for being willing to talk to us, Brother and Sister Shumway. I'd like to start out with Brother Shumway. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and church activity growing up?
I'm a fifth generation member of the church. Grew up in Blanding, Utah, near the Four Corners area, and was thereafter baptized in Mesa. Grew up as a teenager in Texas and served a mission. Met my future wife in Texas, served a mission in the Dominican Republic, and came back and married her. And we've raised 5 kids and got just your standard church membership kind of story.
So with the standard church memberships kind of story, or baptized at 8,
Yeah.
active in the church growing up?
Yeah, yeah.
So, Sister Shumway,
All right.
can you answer the same question and tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay, well, I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. I was baptized as a baby into the Catholic Church. We were pretty active for a good portion of our lives, but as we got older, my parents were always open for us to find our own way and find what works for us. So I'll wait for that for our conversion story. But my parents raised, I'm number 5 of 6, and my family is still in San Antonio, Texas, and I met my husband there, and he drugged me out here to Globe. So,
well, maybe we should go to the story about the two of you meeting, because as I understand it, that has a lot to do with your conversion story. At least it starts about.
It does, and it's super integrated with us being in high school and then going off to college and then coming back. And so I'll just, when we were in high school, we went to the same high school, and we had the same homeroom teacher. My maiden name is Sepulveda, and Scott's Shumway. So when we were placed in our homeroom classroom for the very first day of 10th grade, we were in alphabetical order. I sat just in front of Scott, but I had shown up late to class already on the first day of school. And when I got there, there was only one seat open. And I looked, and there was a huge room. These are classrooms that have at least 35 to 40 students. And I see the classroom, I see the one spot, I'm guessing it's my spot. And I see this guy sitting there, and I immediately felt something. I can't explain what it was, but something drew me to him, and thinking, oh my gosh, who is this guy? And I just felt immediately like, I'm going to end up with this guy. That sounds so weird, but that's how it was just from the very beginning. So that was kind of my first impression of meeting him.
And that was Scott.
And it was Scott, yes.
We liked to have a lot of fun, so we were very good friends throughout high school. I learned just a few years ago that I always wondered why we always had at least one class in high school together. She was very popular. She was on the drill team, the dance team, and had all of her popular friends. And I was this nerdy white guy that didn't play football. So if you don't play football in high school in Texas, you're not popular. But we had a lot of fun times together and did a lot of stuff together. Didn't really date very seriously, but I always had a big crush on Jan in high school. I never told her about that. So
we were in the same friend group. So all of my friends were all of his friends, and we just, Yeah, we
We were
were.
a popular group, and we just established that.
Okay, well, I thought we were. At least I knew him and all of his friends. So
Yeah, that's true.
So it turned out that while we were in school, Scott dutifully dated all my friends. And I was just like, okay, whatever with this guy. Because I just felt like from the beginning, there's something different about him, but I don't know what it is. And he is dating everyone I know except me. And I thought, okay, whatever. And so when we graduated,
I made up for it by asking you to senior prom.
he did. We did go. We went on one date to senior prom. So when we left, we graduated from high school, and then we left our own ways. And I went off to school to pursue an education in dancing, which was the perfect education to realize that's not where I want to be in life. And so while I was there in college, going to be a dancer, I started having these very strong feelings in me, and I couldn't understand like what was going on. But before I get to that, I just want to go back a little bit. When I had met Scott, I was probably around 15 or 16. I had felt like I needed to find something in my life. And so my family had one Bible, and I pulled it out and I read the New Testament. I don't think I understood a whole lot from it. I don't know if it had an impact on me then, but I do remember that I really pushed myself through just to read the New Testament. So by the time we graduated and then I went off to school, I started feeling like there's something more. Like God wants something for me, and it's not dancing. And I need to find what that more was. And so while I was there, I had two choices. I could either ignore that feeling and just go on and continue dancing, or I can go home and just explain to my parents, sorry, you spent all this money, but I'm feeling God's calling me somewhere else. So I didn't have a car, and I didn't have a way to get back home. And weird, my friend got injured, and her parents had to come pick her up. And she's also from my hometown. And so I thought, it's now or never. I either go home right now and try and look for that thing, or I stay here. And I packed up my bags, didn't even think twice. I packed up my bags and went home. And when I got there, it probably was about maybe 3 weeks later, maybe 4 weeks, a month later, Scott popped up again in my life. So we hadn't kept in communication at all, but he popped up in San Antonio. So
My family had all left. I didn't have any family there. So I was just down there for 1 week visiting friends before I went on my mission.
yeah.
And I saw Jan and felt I had given Books of Mormon to a few other friends, but I found out while I was there that Jan was there, and so I went ahead and got a Book of Mormon, and it wasn't the Ted Clough version of the Book of Mormon, but I did write my testimony in it. So I hope Ted doesn't hold that against me. So I gave testimony in it, went by her house and introduced her to the Book of Mormon and told her I was going on a mission and invited her to go to church and to read and pray about it. And then I left and went on my mission. And I did have a conversation with a mutual friend that we had, and said, I gave Jan a Book of Mormon. Would you follow up with her and see if you could take her to church? But she didn't do that until later on.
Eventually. So he hands me this Book of Mormon. I've never heard of this before. Never heard of this religion. Never have seen this book. I'm down south, so the biggest religions down there, if it's not Catholic or Baptist, it's evangelism. And when Scott said he's going on a mission, I've heard of missions before. It's an evangelism mission. And I just thought, that's not what God's calling me to. I'm gonna wait until God sends me the message he's trying to send me. And so I get this Book of Mormon and I nicely say thank you. I take it, and that was it. He leaves, and that's the last I've heard of him. And I just put it on a shelf. I had no intentions of reading it because that's not what God was calling me. I just knew it. He's not calling me for that. And probably maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I started feeling something like to pick up this book. So I pick up this book and I show it to my sister and I said, hey, Scott gave me this book and I was just wondering if you know anything about it. And she looked at it and she says, I think my friend goes to that church. Let me call her and ask her. She calls her friend up and asks, hey, do you belong to this church? And her friend says, yes. She said, will you take us? So my sister had made arrangements for her friend to take me and my sister to this church. Now, just take a little pause here, because when you're Catholic, it doesn't really matter how far you live from the church you're going to go to. You can clearly drive 45 minutes to a chapel because that's your church. And that's not an unusual event. So when my sister's friend took us to her church, we drove at least 45 minutes to get to this church. I didn't think anything different. I just thought, well, that's just how it is. When I got to this church, that's when everything started to change, because I immediately felt something there. And I don't know what exactly I was feeling or what I was sensing, but a clear message came to me that said, this is what I was talking to you about. This is where you belong. And I just remember looking around, and there was very, not to be offensive to young children, but there was very rambunctious young children. And I just thought, wow, this is loud. And this is not what I would have thought.
You have a very strict Catholic upbringing. Very quiet Catholic.
Yes. And I just felt like this is what God's calling me to. And so I started to open my heart to believe, if God's calling me here, then what is it here? And I started to kind of look around, and turns out that was my first day there. I come home, I'm kind of in my mind thinking, what is this? What am I experiencing? What are these feelings I'm having? Still very clueless. Have not prayed, have not opened the book, have not even read his testimony yet. So I'm just like, okay. The next Sunday, her friend takes us again to the church. And I'm just kind of feeling things out, looking around. And that was the last time she took us. She no longer was able to take us. My sister no longer wanted to go. And now it was up to me. If I'm going to go, I have to pack up myself and drive myself out there. So I wasn't a great driver. I was 19, or 18. I still was not a great driver. And so I decided, I asked my dad, I want you to show me the exact directions to get to this church. And he said, okay. And he took me all the back roads so I wouldn't have to get on the highway. And I started driving myself out there, and I just went alone, and I had no one. People were not talking to me because maybe they didn't know I was new. Maybe they just thought I was visiting. I don't know. But it turns out that maybe a month later, now I've been going to church by myself for like 3 weeks alone. So now I've probably gone about 5 or 6 times. And then all of a sudden, Scott's friend pops up at the door. And his friend says, hey, I was wondering if you got that Book of Mormon. And I said, by this point, now I'm more familiar. Now I'm understanding that I need to pray. And now I'm understanding that you actually need to read this book. And luckily, going to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they're very good about quoting scriptures and telling you where to go and reading them. And so I was already somewhat familiar with opening it and searching things out. Not necessarily familiar with the content, but with the habits of opening up and looking. And anyways, he said, would you be interested in going? And I'm like, I am going. And he's like, well, where are you going? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And I told him where I was, and it was like 40 minutes away. And he's like, there's a church down the street from where you live. So I'm like, oh my goodness. And I ended up going with him from that point on. And it was 5 minutes down the road. So it was such a blessing because it came at a huge sacrifice to go all the way out across town to go to church. So I started going to church, and it was Scott's friend, that actually contacted the missionaries and said, she is new, she is investigating. And anyways, Scott left in January, and I got baptized in April. And then Scott's friend, he wrote you a letter, right? And told you that I was baptized. Mm-hmm. And then Scott wrote me a letter and said, just normal things. How are you doing? Heard you were baptized. And then that's how Scott and I got back in contact again. It was after I was baptized in April, and he was on his mission, and we wrote letters to each other, and I just told him things I'm learning. And
back in the day, you had to write things on paper with a pencil.
Yeah.
Very tedious work, but we did it.
So that is kind of, in a nutshell, my conversion story of starting to go to church. And then we had a conversion story of actually getting married because I was the first daughter of my parents to get married. And they, not just them, but I also, growing up, had envisioned the classic Latin American wedding where you have all of your family and all of your friends, and they're all at the church, and they all go to this dance, and they're all together and enjoying everything, celebrating the day with you. But none of my family are members, so for me, getting married was going to be very different. Getting married in the temple was going to be very different. And so we had talked about that, like whether we wanted to get married outside of the temple first or inside the temple. And I'm like, no, I have struggled, and I have committed to the gospel, and I have driven myself to this church, so I deserve to be married in the temple. So.
How did your parents handle that?
Ooh, that was a tough one. Because, well, first of all, I should say this. They loved Scott. Like, he was the nicest guy, and they just thought he was amazing. And then when we told them that we're going to get married, so we kind of sat on the couch, and we're like, we're going to get married. And they're like, oh, that's so awesome, you guys. Congratulations. And then Scott's like, but one problem is we're getting married in the temple, and you're not going to be able to go in the temple.
Why does it quite like that? But that was what they need. That was the message.
So
that didn't go over very well.
No.
Her dad's part Italian and Hispanic, and he's got big hands and a big guy. And he stood up and said, he got his hand out and his finger started shaking at me. He says, you trying to tell me I can't go to my own daughter's wedding? And that's when Jan says, honey, we better go. And so she grabbed my hand and we left the house. And so it didn't go over very well. And we decided to fast and pray about it. And so we had a special fast. Jan fasted for 2 days. Very good for a new convert. She'd been a member of the church like almost 3 years now. And so we fasted and prayed. And
I think it was like my first experience with fasting also. Like, I was fasting before, but I really didn't understand the power of fasting. So when we decided to fast, this is something that was serious. Like, now I really need this blessing. And I need my parents to bless, to have their blessing on this marriage, because it was important to me. My parents, my family are very important to me. And so I wanted them to bless us in our decision to be married. And so this was an important decision of, I need to see a miracle, because the way that we ended it was, this was going to need a miracle. So we had decided to fast.
How'd that go?
Well, we fasted one weekend, and I just didn't have the faith. I fasted, but I didn't have the faith to tell my parents, we're getting married in the temple. That's how it's going to be. And so I thought, okay, I need to have faith. Like, I just can't fast. It's got to be backed up by faith. And so we fasted again. And again, I couldn't do it. Like, I just didn't believe that fasting worked, I guess. And then the third time, I'm like, okay, this time I'm going to fast. I'm going to fast 2 days straight. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell my parents, and that's it. And this time I told other people too. I'm like, hey, you guys, I'm fasting. Please fast with me. I'm going to go tell my parents we're getting married in the temple. Scott was like fasting. We were all just trying to get me to have the faith to trust that Heavenly Father can perform that miracle. And sure enough, I went in there and I waited. I waited till the end of the day, and I'm like, okay, it's now or never. So I told my parents, I said, I love Scott, and we're getting married in the temple, and I want you guys to bless that. And they just said, we know you love him, and we're going to bless you if that's what you want. And I'm like, what? I've been going hungry all this time, and that's like, it was so easy. I couldn't believe it. And that was like kind of my first real big experience with fasting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it works. If anyone's questioning it, it works. So.
I guess I've had the benefit of being able to meet and get to know your parents a little bit. They're okay with it now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we named our children after my parents, so.
We had the first grandkids, so we had a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah. So our first child, Jesse Dean, Jesse's my dad's name, and Dean's Scott's dad's name, and so we combined them. And then Jesse Dean's middle name is Scott, so he's got the entire family legacy lying on him. So, and then Kaylee, her middle name is Alicia, which is my mother's name, Alicia. So,
yeah, it was, once you have grandkids, as many people watching this video, once you have grandkids, that changes everything. So we had it, JD, 10 months after we got married, and her mom was working at the time, and she quit her job.
She did.
And became a full-time grandma. We were living in San Antonio at that time.
She became a full-time involved grandma, yes.
So I got back up to
the they love you stage.
A few more levels of, we can tolerate you, Scott.
Well, let's take you from Texas to coming to Globe. So how did all that happen? How did you get from your start in Texas to...
Well, that's a kind of a faith promoting story for me. Fast forward a few years, we have 5 kids, and we have starting off my career. I've been in South Texas, working for about 8 years now. We had built our dream home, and we were in this wonderful ward. We had all kinds of good friends. Our kids were in great schools, and everything you always wanted as a parent. Really loved the people there. I'd always been, as a youth, I kind of had this feeling that I would end up in South Texas in McAllen. And so that was the first job I got out of school, and went down there, and we thought we were just, this is where we're supposed to be. And we were just going to ride out our days there. And there were some changes going on at work I didn't really like too much. And I had some other colleagues that had come and worked up here in Globe. and they were trying to recruit me up here to work with them. And so I said, no, I'm not going to go to Globe. Why would I go to Globe? There's nothing up there. And so they kept persisting that we actually came up and during my Christmas time off, brought the whole family up here. We made a family vacation out of it and stayed in Miami and worked for about a week or so. And we made it was kind of a fun.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun.
That was when President Hinckley had asked us all to read the Book of Mormon for the end of the year. And so we spent some of the vacation catching up and getting the Book of Mormon read as a family. But
yeah.
Anyways, we packed up in the car. I finished the work assignment here. I said, well, this is great, but we don't ever have to worry about coming to Globe again. So let's go back home. So that was in 2005 and 2006. There was some more changes going on at work I wasn't really excited about, and some other opportunities here in the position up here in Globe. And so one of my colleagues says, look, Scott, we really need you up here. And so they said, what do we need to get you up here? So we talked about compensation, and really it came down to praying. And I don't really see myself as this guy who receives inspiration all the time, but we had a personal prayer, and there was definitely, I cannot deny, I definitely got an answer that we needed to move to Globe. So that's the main reason why we decided to move. And the kids were all very sad and pretty devastated. And but Jan has always been, wherever you need to go, I'll go with you. It
was hard.
She's a real Sariah. And so based on that confirmation, we came up here and gave up what we thought was the great life down there. And looking back, it's one of those things in life where you can't, at the time, it's kind of an act of faith, but when you don't really see God's hands and everything until you look back with some perspective. And once you have the perspective, you can see exactly how God has prepared you and why he guided you to make that decision, because everything just seemed to fall into place after that. We're just in a much better location for here for all the other events that would happen in our lives after that. So been here ever since.
Yep. And now I didn't want to be here, and now we could move, and I'm like, why do we want to leave? I love Globe. Why? I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here. So we love it now.
There was one other thing. We came up here and looked around for homes, which at the time there was this massive housing shortage, and especially here in Globe, which has always been to that a little bit of that degree. But there was an empty lot, and we had built a house in Texas where we lived, and Jan was like still not really on board just yet. She says, look, if you can buy this lot, now mind you, it's not on the market. There's no realtors involved, anything like that. Says, you can buy that lot and promise to build a house, then we'll all move up here with you. So despite the prayer, that was kind of a test we gave the Lord. And the realtor was Brother Schellenberger, Mark Schellenberger, who's doing real estate at the time. And he was very sweet, very kind. And he contacted the owners, and we made an offer. They took it. And so that was
that's how I knew that the Lord wants us here. So
double confirmation that we should be here. So
where was the lot? Is it where you eventually got
It's right here. Yeah. This place is the lot.
It took us a few years because of the housing crash to get it built, but
yeah.
It was a very coveted lot. Lots of people apparently have been trying to buy it, and build a nice little piece of property. And we had people since then, how did you get the owners to sell that to you? So we just asked them.
I don't think we did. I think Heavenly Father was like, y'all need to be in Globe, Arizona for whatever reason at this time. And we're like, okay, Globe, Arizona.
Yeah, so we felt very called when we went to McAllen out of school, and we were there for 8 years. And again, it was kind of same thing here with Globe. For whatever reason, the Lord says, I need you there. And he opened up the doors and made it possible. So,
what do you think it was like for your children starting out here? What was it like raising them here in Globe?
So when we lived in Texas, like Scott said, his work was very busy, and he didn't really have a lot of free time. So we started homeschooling our children so that they could actually spend time when Scott had free time. And it just, we found a love for homeschooling, and the children found a love for doing it too. And so it worked out really nicely. So when we came up here, they came as homeschoolers up here, but the rules, are kind of different. So when we started here, I put them all in public school for the first time, which was pretty interesting for them because the older two that were in high school, they had each other to kind of rely on their first day of school. The middle child had nobody. He went straight into 6th grade and was kind of by himself. And then the younger two were in elementary together. So the very first year was kind of an adjustment year. And I had in my mind something very different. I thought that coming from a big city, that when you come into a new school, you need friends, you need to be on top of certain things. And I didn't see that here. When we came here, everybody was literally so open and so loving and so welcoming. And I was not expecting that. I mean, I'm from Texas, and we like to call that the friendly state, but not like Globe. Globe was sincerely open and willing to take in these new kids and be friends with them, which was so nice. It was just really a good feeling to feel like, wow, everybody is so welcoming to us, and just everything seemed to fall right in place. And our kids who originally were like, we don't want to go to Globe, we don't want to be there, they started here and they loved it. They literally loved being here. And now when we look back, they consider Globe as their home. So I think they had a good experience.
What was the church like here when you got here?
What was it like? Well, there was very welcoming. We were always in the first ward. I don't think we ever spent. We couldn't find a place to live at all, and I had a deadline to start work. So the funny story is to get up here, to get the kids in school, we stayed in the Motel 6 here for about 3 weeks.
No, the funny part was you put us in the Motel 6, and then you went home to go do some stuff. And
I had to go back and get the house packed up and that kind of stuff. But we stayed in this.
So for 3 weeks, we were in Motel 6.
So we couldn't find something. But I remember specifically Tina and Michael McCary they had some kids, our kids at our age, and one of the first weeks we were here, they invited us over to their home. They fixed us bear meat tacos, which we'd never had before, and really made us felt welcome, and that was really nice. And the youth were really accepting and very welcoming. So it was.
That is true. It's hard to invite a family of 7 over.
Brought his bread over. At the time, he was baking a lot of bread.
Yeah.
So they would pop up. We actually had Steve and Julie Burt pop into the Motel 6 and welcome us to go. Yep. Whenever he's in the ward, we got to find a house for the Shumways. And so it was really quite a great experience.
I thought it was a really good experience. And like I said, it was not what I was expecting, not at all. And the Lord literally just poured out this blessing onto us and brought us at the right time to this right ward. And so.
Well, let me ask this. Have there been any particular activities or church activities that have had a positive effect on your family while you've been here in the Gulf State? Any particularly memorable ones?
We had come from a really great, strong youth group in our previous ward. Yeah. And had some really great activities, and I think some of the high adventure things that we did. So my oldest was in young men's, and I was put straight into the young men's presidency and got to serve and work with them, and we planned all kinds of, we went to Lake Powell and a lot of outdoor stuff in Texas. You got to go battle mesquite and flies and humidity. And we got an appreciation for the outdoors. When we moved to Arizona, it's like, oh, this is why people go outdoors, because it's actually fun and pretty and nice. And everybody here has a pickup and a fifth wheel, and Todd and Troy Rainwater and those guys are we just planned these great activities, and everybody volunteered their boats and equipment. So we're outdoors doing activities and doing scouting, and so that was a lot of great activities, and had young women's camp that was very impactful.
I think the biggest thing for like that we all talk about as a family that all of my children were able to be a part of was the Thanksgiving, I don't know, Golden Age dinner. It's that they do because that was something that each one of them filtered through and had an opportunity to take a part of. So
one of the very first ones that was really, I thought was really neat, which we would have never had, we never would have done this where we were living, is that we had a youth, I think it was just our ward, and we had I don't know what you call it, where you get hay bales and stick it on a trailer.
Oh, yeah.
Like a singing thing. And, you would never do that. You can't just get, someone had a trailer, I forget, one of the brethren had a trailer, and we got some hay bales from somebody and put on the trailer, and all the kids just loaded on this trailer. But of course, we're driving around town here, trying to stay off the main roads, but we went up to the CCC camp, and they did a bonfire, and it was just like, we said, you just don't do this kind of stuff in the big city.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Our kids loved it. And it was just stuff that they would have never really experienced. Just like in the public school, even though we did end up them getting out of public school for academics, we did participate in a lot of sports. They got to do things in sports that they probably would have never been able to do in the towns, in the cities we were in before.
Yep.
And I got involved in the soccer programs, both the community and the high school program, and Jan got involved in cheerleading. So we went through high school with our kids and coached them, and got them. So,
there's opportunities.
And those things we would have never had opportunities to do in a bigger city. So,
and I think that I know that they've mentioned that before too. That
you got to remember, I'm from
things that
Blanding.
they get to do.
I'm from Blanding, which is even smaller than Globe. Jan's from the big city, San Antonio. Yeah. She never really experienced what little towns can be like. So I kind of had a feeling. In fact, that was the first feeling I had coming to Globe. This kind of reminds me of my family's town in Blanding. And so the Lord had been working on her. We had gone back to Blanding to have family reunions, and the kids, but now they just got this appreciation for living in a small town. Yep. And the first thing everybody says there's nothing to do. It's because, well, you kids, you don't have any imagination. That's why there's nothing to do. And so, she's the one that actually wants to move back to Blanding now. So,
now I'm committed to small towns.
She wanted to go to Dallas or Houston, where I trained in school and that kind of stuff. So, it's been quite a transformation just because of the experiences we've had here.
Yes, for sure.
Now, both of you have served in who knows how many different callings while you've been here in the Globe Stake, in various organizations. Is there anything that you can share about some of that service that has meant a lot to you, or given you some opportunities to grow?
Oh, yeah. Just recent ones.
Yes.
You want to go first?
No, you go first.
Favorite calling, hands down. Tell Sister Durfee it was the primary. We did a little stint when we were younger as nursery leaders. When our kids had one or two babies, and then that was a lot of fun. But never had been in the primary, and so a couple of years ago, I got called to serve in primary as the 10 and 11-year-olds teacher, and also the boys' activity leaders. And anyways, it's kind of meaningful for me because I remember when I was younger, my dad, who was always in leadership positions in the church, I remember him sharing a testimony once of his favorite calling, which was primary. They had just moved to a new town, and they didn't really know him or anything like that. And they asked him to serve in primary, and he was telling the story of how he had just developed this wonderful love for the kids, and how that was real impactful in their lives. And he was only there for serving the calling for just a few months, and then got put in the stake presidency after that. And that kind of stuck in my mind, because primary kids, they can be, especially young boys, and you're trying to get an activity, and they can be a little irksome sometimes. And I put it in my mind that my goal here is to really just to develop a love for the kids in my class and the boys that come out to the activities. And if maybe we don't get anything done, and maybe they don't learn a whole lot, but if they can just experience feeling accepted and loved, no matter how annoying they become or how irritating they are. And that was really mostly my goal. And, we planned some fun things to do, and they obviously loved the activities, I think. But more than anything else, I think that it was special because kids, they love being loved. That was my experience. And even now, we're serving outside of our home ward, and went back to a state conference, and some of the same primary kids came up, and they're so excited to see me and give me a big hug. And so that's pretty exciting when you can have that kind of influence. And those are, kind of the classic primary stories you hear that people share, how they remember their primary teacher, and how the only thing they really remember is how their primary teacher really loved them and showed them Christ-like love. So that was my story.
Yeah. Well, I've spent the bulk of my service in primary and in young women's, and maybe the past 3-4 years I've been in Relief Society, which was completely different. And I feel like it is in Relief Society that I have really grown the most, because I have to stretch myself out to connect with other women, and to be to visit them, and to, I don't know, extend compassion in a different level than you would with a child. As a mother, it's so easy to extend that love to young children and to teenagers. That was my career, as a full-time mom. And so now that I have this opportunity to work with adult women, it's been so transforming and so enlightening, like this whole new world. And now that we serve in Superior, even more so, how much I love learning to connect with the women in Spanish, which is not, I thought I knew a lot of Spanish. I don't know as much as I thought I knew. So it's been really hard. And I've spent a lot of time like praying on my knees, crying, please help me to understand more and connect with the women more. But it's just been so amazing how, as I'm also in Relief Society there, but I'm not the one nurturing and ministering to these ladies. They're the ones nurturing and ministering to me and helping me through a transition time that's been very challenging for me to do. So I'm definitely going to go with Relief Society. It's been very wonderful, a beautiful opportunity for us to be in Superior Learning and being with the Spanish speakers. And so,
yeah, the principle that the Lord qualifies who He calls, something like that.
Yeah.
Which my understanding is, you're not qualified. You don't have any really.
Oh gosh.
tells you that calling, but He prepares you. And if you serve, with, the best intentions and faith, He will give you the talents that you need to bless the lives that you're serving.
Yep, definitely.
Let me ask you about this, because Sister Shumway, you mentioned basically learning from the sisters in Superior.
Yes.
Have the two of you been recipients of any special acts of service that have that created a very positive impact in your life that you could share with us?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mentioned when we first moved here, the McCarrys, that was really super helpful. something that helped us, and we had little acts like that quite frequently. One that was kind of special is our oldest daughter, Kaylee, had just started high school, and she was 15, I think, at the time. And we had moved here 2 weeks before her. Well, she was going to be 16, wasn't she?
She was turning 16.
Turning 16. She's just started high school. She did not know.
Wait, no. She can't be starting. She had just started high school, but she must have been 14 or 15. I can't remember. Yeah. Well, whatever the age was, it doesn't matter. She was having a birthday. That was the main point.
Didn't know anybody. And, these guys were not really excited about moving here. So there was Moki Daniels, which I forget her maiden name, but she was a senior. So, a few years older than our daughter Kaylee. And I thought it was really neat. Moki came up to her at high school in class and introduced herself. And I think planned a young women's activity. I mean, Kaylee had been here maybe 2 weeks tops, so nobody knew her at all. And so Moki got the young women's together. I thought it was, and they did an activity for her and really made her feel welcome. And it was, you could just, Kaylee would tell us a story, and you could tell it was just really, really impactful for her. And for someone so much older, because, at that age, these seniors, they like walk on water, And so there's usually, you try and pick on the younger girls and make their lives miserable, but Moki was really instrumental in helping Kaylee understand, that she's special and there are good people here that want her to succeed and be happy. So I thought that was just one small example of the many times that we've needed people to help us.
Yeah. We
borrow people's tools and equipment, and everybody's got something here in Globe. We're not that handy, but we like to be handy, but we just have all this stuff. We'll borrow people's trailers or borrow their tools or help us move. We've moved 3 times since we were here.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of
outreach from the ward and members and people that are not in the ward. So I would say I agree with you that it's been a lot of small acts that made such a huge impact in our lives. It's something that can seem so simple, just having such a big impact, especially the McCarrys, and we've mentioned it before, but it's not an easy thing to invite a family of 7 to your house. So, and to feed them all, Well,
here's another example. Just a couple of days ago, our oldest son, he's JD, who moved here. He was here 1 year. And Stephen Burke was his bishop at the time. And this is, fast forward to today. And Steve, just out of the blue, just texts me and says, "Hey, can you pass on to JD, tell him happy birthday for me?" On his birthday. And I had forgotten this.
Oh my gosh.
I was going to remember. I had a reminder on. But Jan got this good man who we've known here all these years. And we love dearly their whole family. And he's remembering my own son's birthday. I thought that was pretty cool. So we have little stuff like that.
Well, both of you have a reputation for being very friendly and outgoing, going out of your way to make people feel comfortable at church. Can you discuss the importance of fellowshipping and share any fellowshipping stories that you might have here in Globe State?
I can share, coming from being a new investigator in the church, and I remember just having so many people just reach out to me and being so friendly, and I wanted that. I wanted to be that person one day. And so I just put it in my mind that when I have a family one day, we're going to be that family. We're going to try and be nice to everybody and be like reaching out to people. So I'm glad that you said that. We have a reputation for it, because I really wanted to be like really reaching out. But to me, it's so important to just to reach out to people and just let them know that every face makes a difference. You know, we have one of our favorite conference traditions was, they don't do it anymore, but they used to have conference in the chapel. And I am a huge conference fan. Like, I should have a conference shirt on that says conference weekend or something.
Tailgating conference.
Yeah, like we should have. So it excites me so much. And so to kind of excite my children, I made a tradition, which I'm a huge fan of traditions too. So I made a tradition that every conference we go to the church and we sit and we listen to conference. And on Saturdays, we go out to eat between conference sessions. But on Sundays, we do a potluck and we just bring food and share with whoever's watching conference. And we just make sure that we bring a lot of food. And so my kids were always like, why do we have to go to church? We can just watch it at home. And I'm like, because people need to see you and you need to see people. And next time you're in the grocery store, you can say to yourself, oh, I know that person. They go to conference, or they go to church, or, you know, they go to young women's, or they go to young men's. I said, we need to see each other. We need to recognize one another as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but more importantly, as disciples of Heavenly Father. Like, we are his followers and we need to recognize that. So for me, whenever I see someone that maybe they weren't going to have something to do for Christmas, I want them to come to my house. I want them to know that, hey, you've got a whole group of people that are so excited to have you at their house. Or if it's their birthday, I want to celebrate it with them. Like, you've got a group of people, an instant party of people that are happy to do that because we're intertwined, you know, we help each other out. And when they see me, they do the same thing. Like, I'm not giving service that I'm not already receiving. So.
Wonderful. Well, two things. First, is there anything that you thought of, perhaps while we've been talking, that you'd like to share about the stake or the war or your experiences here? And then second, would you be willing to leave, help us in the interview with a brief testimony?
Sure. I can probably combine that into one. I'll include a testimony of being Christ-like. I've always felt like I've been extremely blessed. And when I think of all of our brothers and sisters on the earth and all of those who come before, and for the Lord to give me the family that I was born into, and being born in the covenant, and the recipient of temple blessings and ordinances. I guess I'm kind of a friendly guy, to just my personality wise. Jan's patriarchal blessing says she has a sparkling personality, so her personality is a little bit better than mine, which is good. But I feel not just an obligation, but also the desire to share those blessings with whoever the Lord puts in my life. There was a few years ago, we were doing some landscaping here around the house, and some big projects there, and there was this man that was in the crew there, and he would show up drunk. He was an older man, and you could tell that he struggled with addictions, but you know, they had, you know, several months of work to do here, and I just got to start talking to him and visiting with him. He told me about his life, and long story short, you know, he was he was converted to the gospel, was baptized, ends up marrying a wonderful senior missionary who served here in the ward. And recently got cancer and passed on. Actually, there's 2 or 3 stories like that I've had here in Globe with people the Lord just puts in my way. And I just start talking and we become friends. And, but I think, what if, despite my busy life and everything I've gone on, what if I had not taken the chance to talk to him? He was ready. The Lord had been preparing him, just like the Lord had been preparing my wife at the time. And I had no idea. But what I've learned is sometimes you can't preach to people, but everybody likes having a friend. And sometimes friendship has to come before you can preach and teach. And that's kind of how I share the gospel with people, is to let them know I'm genuinely concerned about them and try and help them and see them as, you know, how I used to be, and how the Lord is patient and loving and kind with them. And if the Lord can, you know, make something of my life and bless me with the joy and happiness that I've had, he can do it with everybody. And he just needs people that are willing to say hi and to talk. And a lot of times those don't go much beyond a really good friendship, but you gained a friend, and sometimes you gain eternal friends. And so that's what I've loved most about being here in Globe, is just the opportunity to meet lots of new people. Some of the people that I bring home, Jan's not too excited about, but she's been a very good sport about. Sometimes they end up in our house, the ones we try to help, but luckily they move on to hopefully something better. So I just know that, you know, it's just wonderful to become, I'm hoping that, like the scripture says, that, you know, be careful with the judgment that you judge, because that's the judgment the Lord will judge you with.
I'm going to echo his testimony, because I have a very lifelong testimony of missionary work. Something that Scott likes to say is that when he handed me that Book of Mormon, he thought I would be the last person on earth to join the church. And I always used to get so frustrated that he would say that. And I'm like, don't say that. But in reality, you know, there was nothing pointing out that I should have joined the church. Nothing was pointing out saying that I was already having marvelings. I didn't know they were marvelings, but I was
advertising you were looking for anything new.
No, I definitely was not. And I think that that's how it is in life. A lot of people are not advertising, that they're looking for something different. They're looking for something new. And so it's so important for us and for me to share the gospel and to share my testimony with as many people as I can.
Wonderful.
So,
well, thank you to both of you for sharing your stories, your testimonies, and your experiences here. Certainly have done a lot for a lot of different people here, and we're all very grateful to Sister Shumway that Scott gave you that book of Mormon. From our perspective, it seems like you're a natural.
oh, thank you.
Anyway, thank you for visiting with us, and we'll conclude our interview.
Thank you.